Hi Capricorn, this is Lee at Fresh Astrology. We are looking at the final quarter of 2018. Normally I do month-to-month forecasting, but my schedule is very full because I'm also a coach and I have a whole business around coaching that's retreats and events, and that keeps me quite busy. So this is my compromise. And because I like it. I don't want, I mean, I could just give this up because, you know, I'm focused elsewhere, but I don't want to. This is something I've been doing for years and it's kind of fun, but it is challenging to keep it in my schedule. So anyway, let's take a look at your quarter. We're a little more than halfway through October. And so we're looking at the rest of October, November, and December. And the marker that really pervades, or the markers that pervade October, November, have to do with where Uranus is in your chart and where Venus is in your chart, because both of them are retrograde as I record this in October. And they're directly across the chart from one another, and not only that, but they're both straddling two different zodiac signs and two different areas of the chart. So we've got 4 areas of the chart implicated, 4 zodiac signs implicated, and then 2 planets, not just in their usual planetary energies, but retrograde. So that's a lot to take in. And we also have, due to the time of year, a lot is weighted toward Libra and Scorpio right now, and that happens to be also where Venus is. It's straddling those 2 signs, and in your chart, it's also straddling 2 houses, the 10th and 11th. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Uranus is at the other end of your chart, straddling Aries, where it's wanting to leave Aries, but it's going back in, and Taurus. So we've got those 2 signs, and then on your chart, they're in the houses 4 and 5, so the 4th and 5th houses. The houses, in case you don't know, represent areas of life. And so we'll talk about the areas of life that are emphasized right now. So again, because it's so complex, because it's implying 2 different signs on, a total of 4 different signs and 4 different houses, I've been trying to find ways to simplify so we can talk about what's at the heart of it, what's the meat of it, and what's the overarching meaning for most in your sign. If I try to get a little too granular on exactly what it means, it's going to apply to 20% of you and not 80%. And I'd rather hit the 80% than the 20. So that being said, I would say when I look at this, there's so much here about family, and because Uranus is straddling the houses on one end, the 4th house where you have Aries is about your immediate nuclear family. So that can mean the family you were born into, including grandparents and aunts and uncles. And it also, moving forward to where you are now, it's and even in the future, but we'll discuss now, it implies your nuclear family now. But also it can, if you're somebody who, let's say there's an orphan out there, a Capricorn orphan, who never really met his or her family, and they're not married, they don't really have a family, so to speak, right now. This would have more to do with dealing with psychological issues from the past, moving abruptly, or changing your mind about moving. Perhaps some of you are changing your mind about moving, or you're waffling, like, do I move or don't I move? Do I move or don't I move? And you may be changing your mind. Something abrupt may have happened within your family or friends or children that makes you change, like second guess yourself, or wonder if maybe you should do something different. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you are kind of on the fence, really feeling like you're on the fence about what to do next in terms of where to live, what to do about children, what to do about some family issues. But if you family, like biological family, isn't a big thing in your life, then it's more about where you live, maybe a romantic partner, or maybe being in the midst of resolving issues around your past. Like, you know, in an extreme case, somebody's orphaned or put up for adoption when they're little. You know, maybe there's some issues going back around that. That could be psychological or real. Some people go back in adulthood to figure out who their parents were who put them up for adoption. So there could be stuff around that, or thinking, just thoughts around it. So that's where some big shakeups are happening. So again, like with kids too, if you have children, you could just find that suddenly you're in the land of teenagers, or your kids are behaving like teenagers, or if you have teenagers, there's some changes there. Maybe they're moving to college, or there's there are themes of moving. So I suspect a lot of Capricorns have moved recently and will be moving or planning to move. And even changing their minds about what they've done, or even what they're planning to do, they may be rethinking. At the other end of the spectrum, we have this area that has to do with career and kind of the arc of where you are now moving towards your future. And there's a pause button with Venus here kind of poised on this point between Libra and Scorpio, where Venus is a personal planet, so often it represents people, but it can also just have to do with you. So we'll think of what that can mean both ways. There may be some kind of pivotal person who features in how you move forward with your career. There's some key person, or maybe people, but women, there's a heavy emphasis on women here, but it doesn't have to be a woman. It could just be somebody who's a Libra or Taurus, or has qualities of Venus. But there's something important going on where you may be feeling like you're waiting for your future to arrive, especially with respect to your career. So there's a bit of a pause button there, waiting for something. I think by mid-November, you'll feel like you're moving forward. So you may be waiting on someone to get back to you, like if you were applying for jobs and the person in charge of hiring you is a woman, you haven't heard from them. I'm just making something up as some scenario. Or maybe something about your career hinges on women, or a decision of a woman, or help of a woman, or somebody very Libra or Taurus. There's a bit of a just wait, let's wait for a second. And that's also happening down in the area of home and family. Like, hang on. There's a hang on, wait. And you may even, with your future plans and where you thought you had been going, what you thought you were going to do may be changing, may be up for reevaluation. So let's just say that again. So what you thought you had been doing, you were going to move forward in your career, you may reevaluate that. What you thought you were going to do with your future and how you were kind of envisioning your future, you may be reevaluating that. And it may have to do with surprise changes with people close to you. So it's friends who are like family, family members, moving, surprises that have to do with your family world, or what feels like family. So some surprises may impact and change your future plans. And so because you're already kind of in the flow of moving toward what you thought your future plan was, when something has happened, you are like, wait, this may change what I thought I was going to do. I may make a different decision. So I think a lot of you may have something like that going on. So it could be relatively minor, just a slight tweak to what you do, or it could be a little more major than that. Just depends. But that's the feeling of it. Your future has been a big emphasis. It's been a big part of your vision over this last year, really focusing on where you're headed. And what you and kind of literally maybe doing exercises where you're envisioning what you want your future to be, the life you would like to live. A lot of you may have been doing work there. You've been expanding your social circles, a lot of you. And in November, Jupiter, which has been there causing the expansion of emphasis on your future and maybe social circles and networking, is going to be moving into your 12th house. So over the following year, starting in November, you're prepping for Jupiter to go into your sign next year in 2019, toward the end of the year. And it's going to be a huge year for you. Like this time next year, huge life-changing events, especially for Capricorns in particular. Major year for you. It's like you will remember this as the year your life changed, 2019. But it may happen toward the tail end of the year. In the meantime, what you do with this Jupiter energy is mostly allow it to support you, because I think you've got some stuff going on with family that's could be anxiety producing, jarring. Anytime you move, even if you want to move, it can be hard on you. Even if it's a positive move, it just takes a toll. And with every move I've had, and most of them are always positive, not all, but for positive reasons, it takes a toll to actually move and readjust to a new space and figure out where to put all your stuff, and your stuff doesn't fit. And even when you move in a larger space, in my case, not all my stuff is fitting, and I don't know how that works, that I moved from a smaller space to a bigger space and I can't find space for anything. I don't know. But Jupiter will act during this time like, it's almost like this angel that comes in close and just holds you and keeps you from falling too far. So whatever you're adapting to this year, whatever plans get changed, if things aren't working out the way you thought they would work out, and it's not the way you envisioned, Jupiter's there to catch you. Jupiter is there to catch and hold you. And you won't fall too far. And it's like your mood as a result, and the way you feel about yourself and life, is bolstered, and you just feel kind of oddly okay with everything. It really is like a psychological boost. I would say the exception to that would be if you have untreated mental illness, or maybe someone in your world has untreated mental illness, then there may be an expansion around that where it's obvious either you've got to do something to help yourself, or somebody in your family, somebody close to you, needs to get treatment or go in the hospital to get a little extra help. But on the whole, with Jupiter here, you're okay. You can get through all of this, and you just have this kind of miraculous ability to cope with whatever, and you're okay. You rebound quickly from disappointment, you rebound from upset, you rebound from arguments. I mean, you just are okay, like bizarrely okay. Even though not everything in your life is okay, you you ultimately just, it's like you have this like little secret angel just kind of holding you up. That's the best way to describe it. It feels like that. And like I said, you know, we're prepping for a major year. So I would say this year it may do you well to do a lot more self-care, a lot more retreat time, alone time, time away to rest, and it's like a time to rest up and rejuvenate, or to make sure you add some time there. Or it may just be a theme, like if you run a spa, that's your business, or work at a spa, maybe the spa expands. You know, sometimes it can have to do with your work, but depending on your work. Sometimes when you see Jupiter dip into the 12th house, somebody's working on a book behind the scenes, or a big project that won't go public until next year. So some of you, it could be like a work project that you're incubating and working on behind the scenes. So there's some of that. But even if you've got a big project behind the scenes, it's also important to take time to breathe deeply and maybe do some meditation, some yoga. The more yin versus yang, yin types of activities that are quiet, peaceful, receptive. It's a time to maybe develop practices like that if you don't currently have practices like that. It's working on your connection to spirit, to God, to the universe. A lot of people feel an expansion in their spiritual life of some sort, and it, you know, that can apply no matter what stripe you are, religiously or spiritually. You can add depth and strengthen and expand your any kind of practices or study about spirituality. So it's a nice year. It's more subtle and behind the scenes feeling than what will happen to you next year, which will be like total turnaround in a good way. What else can we say here? Let's move into that. So that's the predominant feeling of October into November. So let's take a look at December. I do feel like a lot of you could be, like I said, moving. A lot of you may be moving in December. That might be when you're actually moving. If you're not moving in December, or a move isn't a part of what you're doing, there may be just a lot of energy put into the home, the homestead. Because of the 12th house Jupiter, it could be for some people helping their parents with their home, or an estate kind of situation, like a parent's estate or a bequest. Not for everyone, don't get worried, but sometimes when you see 8th, as we do here, 8th and 12th house activity around this time, you can see like an inheritance, or somebody's like an executor of an estate. In some instances you see that, but not all. And it can just show a lot of energy around the home. Somebody's moving in, so you have a lot of activity when somebody moves in. Maybe they're getting the room ready, or there are just changes in the home, and all this energy comes into the home. Maybe you're expanding or working, like putting on a new room, or improving a home. But it feels more like, rather than a lavish improvement, more like work. Just like chores. I think there's some chores on the horizon for a lot of you, but it's not like it's permanent. It's actually pretty fleeting. It may feel like 2 months you've got some chores, and you've got to deal with a lot of work around the home for some reason. There is some kind of family it could express itself in a couple of ways. It could be family healing, but it may, when you're healing, that suggests there was something to heal from. But there is this idea of healing in the family, but it suggests there was a reason to heal prior to the healing. So some kind of pain around, again, I mentioned a bequest situation. So if there was a death in the family, or if people have been estranged, there could be some healing here. It might come with being able to express yourself. You may have to stand up and speak up for yourself. You don't have to go as far as arguing, but it may feel like you have to push for something to happen or put energy into the healing that has to happen. It's a birthday month for you in December. Not everybody, but it starts to be a time when Capricorn feels more energized. And I do see that energy, especially around the home and family, but you're feeling more energized. And it's relative to that Jupiter going into your 12th house. So it's like you feel the need for reflection and some alone time and away time, while at the same time you are a little bit energized, because just this time of year you always are. You may be recognized and given some kind of award or honor or promotion, leadership. There's some recognition of your leadership ability for some. Some people may need to, how to say this? There's a boundary issue, so there may be a spotlight on a boundary issue and boundaries can come about in different ways. Sometimes we think of it more in terms of somebody else, not us, is overstepping a boundary or causing us irritation or pain because that person has, it's all of them. They've got boundary issues. But because this is in your first house, there may be a boundary issue you have where you need to monitor your own boundaries and how you observe boundaries. And making sure you don't tread into other people's territory and do something kind of ham-handed by mistake or just unintentionally or just not paying attention, that you may be stepping on the toes of somebody and you don't realize that. You will become aware of it somehow. Either you'll just see it or somebody will tell you, like, back off. And they may say it in a nice way, but you may get some kind of message like, okay, I need to back off a little bit. I need to pay attention to my own boundaries in terms of what I do to others. But it could go both ways. But because it's in your first house, I just want to suggest gently that there are times when you may also, without meaning to, we don't always mean to do this stuff, but you may, without having recognized it before, suddenly see that you need to work on how you go into other people's territory. Whatever that it could be their personal space, it could be have something to do with their house or neighbors or rooms and how people live together. But it could also be, because that fourth house can suggest territory. So, copyright issues, patent issues, just always borrowing kind of heavily from somebody else to the extent that they may feel like you're treading on them. And it has to be pretty blatant, but you may sense like, okay, everything they say, I'm borrowing it heavily, and it may start to feel to that person or party or company like you're borrowing a little too heavily, or you may just suddenly realize, wait, I'm borrowing a little too heavily. Or, for a few of you, you may think, they're borrowing a little too heavily from me. And the spotlight issue here is it's like an awareness. It doesn't mean you have to act. you can just notice. Sometimes noticing is all you need to do. You might just slightly modify something you do. It doesn't have to be a big issue or a big blow up, but possibly for some of you who have your own businesses, that may be that Chiron Mars and then Uranus, there may be a little shake up there where you just have to be aware that boundaries are important and people need to respect you, and you need to respect other people's boundaries and ideas, and make sure you're not just siphoning off their energy. It becomes a bit, and it's tricky to know sometimes, you know, where the boundary is. You know, it can be a little elusive sometimes. The difference between just doing what you need to do and treading a little too heavily into someone else's territory. It can be kind of murky and unclear. And it just depends, like if you're in sales or in competition with other companies or other salespeople, there may just be a little murkiness there, and there may just be this expanded awareness in December, where you're just like, oh, okay, somebody may let you know, you may have to let someone know that they're treading on, you know, it goes both ways, but I would say it's you who need to have the awareness, and you may need to look at your own, like just to make sure, you know, your fences are tended well, and you're not like gardening in someone else's garden and getting their tomatoes. And maybe literally in some cases, because there's this emphasis on neighbors. Are you know, mowing their lawn and trimming their hedges and gathering their grapes, and suddenly you realize, oh wait, that's not my property. But it can be like that more metaphorically in a business sense, or even if in a state situation where there's people are dividing up a bequest, you know, an inheritance. Sometimes there's a little friction there where you know, one person thought that Aunt Sally had always meant for them to get a particular chair, and another person thought Aunt Sally had definitely promised that chair to her, and then these two people think that chair is mine, and then the other person perceives, you know, each person perceives the other to be treading on their territory and crossing their boundary. And that's something, like, you have to decide in moments like that, and in business too, and in neighbor situations, what's that goal? If the short-term goal is only to get as much as you can get, it has long-term consequences, and there will be ripple effects if you focus only on what you can get. If you value relationships, then you need to consider that more the goal, that the relationship and preserving and healing that relationship is the goal, and you have to make a decision. So I think in most cases it's better to think of preserving the relationship rather than getting as much as you can get. There are exceptions to that. When someone's really like almost stealing from you, then that's a little bit different. But if it's just this, like, my feeling is that if I have something special that somebody has promised me, like a chair, and somebody else is convinced it's their chair, it may be hard to let the chair go because maybe it had sentimental value, or you had a perfect place for it wherever you lived. But you can get over the disappointment of not having a chair. It's possible to work on getting over that and be successful at getting over the loss of that chair and letting it go. But it's sometimes impossible to repair relationships when we focus too much on only what we can gain or get. It's better to look at the relationship as a whole and how to preserve that by sometimes, even if you think you're right, even if you know you're right. It's funny how people are like, I know I'm right. I don't think I'm right. I know I'm right. But then the other person thinks the same thing. And so you can know you're right. You can know that that territory was meant for you, that you deserved to get whatever. But there's a little bit of a relationship issue here to tend to. And you get to decide how you do that. And I wish you the best. So I hope that talking it through here can help you recognize what you need to do if this has already cropped up, or if it continues to crop up, or if it does crop up before the end of the year. Overall, you've got a lot of Venus help in this area of envisioning your future, planning your future, expanding your network, making friends. You've got a lot of help from Venus in the end, in December. And there is this little angel protecting you. Just think of yourself as having a guardian angel this year, starting in December, well, November, but in December is where we are now in the reading. So just think of yourself, you do have protection. You won't die from not getting a sale. You won't die from not getting your way. You won't die from losing a chair, but it can be devastating to lose relationships. So I think tend to those first. All right, take care, guys.